The capuchin monkey's warning came without sound, just a sudden stillness that made Officer Benjamin Walker's blood run cold. Kiko's small body had gone completely rigid on his shoulder, every muscle tense as his dark eyes tracked a passenger moving through the security checkpoint. The man looked ordinary enough, but Kiko's reaction triggered every instinct Walker had developed in his years of airport security work. Los Angeles International Airport's Terminal 7 thrummed with its usual afternoon chaos. Flight 892 to Tokyo was boarding in 30 minutes, and the departure lounge was packed with travelers clutching boarding passes, checking phones, and managing restless children. But in this sea of ordinary activity, something had caught the attention of the airport's most unusual security officer. Walker had been partnered with Kiko for 2 years, ever since the experimental primate security program had been quietly implemented at LAX. The capuchin monkey's intelligence and ability to detect suspicious behavior patterns had proven remarkably effective, though few passengers ever realized they were being observed by a 4-pound security specialist with opposable thumbs and an IQ that rivaled some humans. "What is it, buddy?" Walker whispered, his voice barely audible over the gate announcements. Kiko's head tilted slightly, his dark eyes never leaving the well-dressed man who was now settling into a seat near the boarding area. The passenger appeared to be in his 40s, wearing an expensive charcoal suit and carrying a sleek black briefcase that screamed corporate executive, but something about the man's behavior was setting off alarms in Kiko's primitive yet highly attuned brain. The monkey's tiny fingers gripped Walker's uniform shoulder patch, a behavior the officer had learned to interpret as, "Pay attention, this is important." Walker casually adjusted his position to get a better view of the target. The man, according to his boarding pass, Dr. Harrison Reed, traveling first class, sat with perfect posture, his briefcase positioned precisely beside his feet. Every few seconds his eyes would dart to the departure board, then to his expensive watch, then back to the briefcase. The pattern was subtle, almost imperceptible to human observation, but Kiko's enhanced behavioral recognition abilities had spotted it immediately. "Nervous flyer?" Walker murmured to his partner, but Kiko's response was a barely perceptible shake of his small head. The monkey had been trained to differentiate between normal travel anxiety and suspicious behavior patterns that could indicate criminal intent or security threats. Dr. Reed's credentials had checked out perfectly during the initial security screening. Stanford Medical School graduate, currently working for a pharmaceutical research company based in Switzerland. His luggage had passed through X-ray machines without incident, and his documents were impeccable. But Kiko's instincts were rarely wrong, and Walker had learned to trust his unusual partner's assessments completely. As Walker watched, Reed reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small electronic device, what appeared to be a standard smartphone. But Kiko's reaction was immediate and dramatic. The monkey's body went from rigid alertness to active agitation, his small hands beginning to gesture in the sign language he had been taught for covert communication. "Danger," Kiko signed with quick, precise movements. "Hidden, wrong," Walker's pulse quickened. In 2 years of partnership, Kiko had never used the danger signal for anything less than a genuine security threat. The monkey's ability to detect concealed weapons, drugs, and even psychological states that indicated violent intent had been documented and verified by the Department of Homeland Security, though the program remained classified. "Security Command, this is Walker," he spoke quietly into his radio. "I need a discreet background check on passenger Harrison Reed, flight 892 to Tokyo. Seat 3A. Copy that, Walker." "What's the nature of your concern?" Walker glanced down at Kiko, who was now using both hands to communicate in increasingly urgent sign language. "Advanced threat assessment indicates potential security risk. Request immediate escalation." While waiting for the background check, Walker began his own closer observation. Reed had opened his briefcase and was reviewing what appeared to be medical documents. From a distance, everything looked legitimate: charts, pharmaceutical research papers, and what looked like patent applications. But Kiko's agitation was increasing by the minute. The monkey suddenly pointed with one tiny finger toward Reed's briefcase, then made a series of rapid hand gestures that Walker had never seen before. Kiko appeared to be improvising sign language, desperately trying to communicate something that wasn't in his trained vocabulary. "Calm down, buddy," Walker whispered. "Show me what you're seeing." Kiko's response was to leap from Walker's shoulder onto a nearby chair, positioning himself for a better view of Reed's activities. The monkey's enhanced vision could detect details that human eyes might miss, and his behavior analysis capabilities extended far beyond basic threat recognition. Walker's radio crackled to life. "Walker, we've got a problem. Harrison Reed's identity checks out, but there's something unusual about his travel patterns. He's made 17 international trips in the past 6 months, all to countries with minimal pharmaceutical oversight. And his employer? The company was incorporated just 8 months ago. Understood. What's our protocol? Maintain observation. Federal agents are en route, but we need to avoid alerting the subject until they arrive." But Kiko had other plans. The monkey suddenly began making a low, chattering sound that Walker recognized as extreme distress. In the wild, capuchin monkeys used this vocalization to warn their troops of immediate danger from predators. Kiko had never made this sound before, not even during the most intense training scenarios. Reed looked up from his documents, his eyes scanning the departure lounge until they landed on Kiko. For just a moment, his carefully maintained expression of calm professionalism slipped, replaced by something that looked distinctly like fear. He quickly closed his briefcase and stood up, checking his watch again. "He's moving," Walker reported into his radio. "Subject appears to be aware of surveillance." Reed began walking toward the men's restroom, his pace measured but purposeful. Walker had to make a decision: follow and risk exposing the operation, or lose visual contact on a potential security threat. Kiko made the decision for him. The monkey leaped from the chair and began following Reed at ground level, using his small size to remain unnoticed as he darted between luggage and passengers' legs. Walker had no choice but to follow, maintaining distance while keeping both his target and his partner in sight. The restroom was nearly empty when Reed entered, with only one other passenger washing his hands at the sink. Walker positioned himself outside, unable to follow without completely blowing his cover. But Kiko had no such limitations. The monkey slipped under the restroom door and disappeared inside. For several tense minutes, Walker waited. Other passengers came and went, but Reed remained inside. Walker's radio remained silent. The federal agents hadn't arrived yet, and he was operating without backup in an increasingly volatile situation. Then Kiko reappeared, sliding back under the door with something clutched in his tiny hands. The monkey scrambled up Walker's leg and onto his shoulder, chattering urgently while holding out what appeared to be a small, clear vial filled with liquid. Walker's blood ran cold as he realized what Kiko had discovered. The vial was labeled in what looked like Arabic script, and the liquid inside had an unusual amber color that didn't match any legitimate pharmaceutical compound he'd ever seen. "Security Command, this is Walker. We have a code red situation. My partner has recovered what appears to be an unidentified biological agent. Subject is still in the restroom, and I need immediate backup." "Copy that, Walker. Federal agents are in the terminal. Maintain your position and do not approach the subject." But as Walker spoke into his radio, Reed emerged from the restroom. His previously calm demeanor had been replaced by barely controlled panic, and his eyes immediately went to the vial in Kiko's hands. For a moment, the two men stared at each other across the busy departure lounge, the weight of the situation settling between them like a physical presence. Reed's hand moved toward his jacket pocket, but Kiko was faster. The monkey launched himself from Walker's shoulder, landing on Reed's chest and clinging to his tie, while chattering at maximum volume. The commotion drew the attention of every passenger in the area, creating exactly the kind of scene that would make it impossible for Reed to act without being noticed. "Federal agents! Nobody move!" The voice cut through the chaos as 3 men in dark suits appeared from different directions, their badges visible and weapons drawn. Reed froze, his hand still halfway to his pocket, while Kiko continued his vocal assault from his position on the man's chest. "Dr. Reed, or whoever you are, you're under arrest," one of the agents announced. "Please remove your hand from your jacket slowly and place both hands where we can see them." As Reed complied, Walker carefully retrieved the vial from Kiko's tiny hands. The monkey had somehow managed to discover and extract what was clearly the most important piece of evidence in what was shaping up to be a major security incident. "Good work. Partner," Walker whispered to Kiko, who was now perched contentedly on his shoulder, grooming his fur as if nothing unusual had happened. The investigation that followed revealed the scope of what Kiko's instincts had detected. Dr. Harrison Reed was actually Viktor Petrov, a former Soviet biochemist who had been operating an international bioweapons smuggling network. The vial contained a strain of engineered bacteria that could have been weaponized if it had reached its intended destination. Petrov had been using his fake pharmaceutical company as cover for transporting biological agents to terrorist organizations around the world. His frequent international travel had allowed him to build a network of contacts in countries with weak security oversight, and his legitimate-seeming medical credentials had enabled him to pass through airport security without suspicion, but he hadn't counted on being observed by a capuchin monkey whose behavioral analysis capabilities surpassed those of most human security personnel. How did the monkey know? Agent Sarah Collins asked Walker during the debriefing. Our own intelligence network took months to identify Petrov's operation, and your partner spotted him in minutes. Walker looked down at Kiko, who was playing with a small toy while the adults talked. Kiko reads micro-expressions and behavioral patterns that humans can't consciously detect. He probably spotted inconsistencies in Petrov's body language that indicated deception and stress levels beyond normal travel anxiety. But how did he know to look in the restroom? How did he know where Petrov had hidden the vial? That's the part I'm still trying to figure out, Walker admitted. Kiko's training covers threat detection and basic search procedures, but what he did today went beyond anything we've practiced. It's like he understood the broader context of the situation and acted accordingly. Collins studied the small monkey, who looked up at her with intelligent dark eyes before returning to his toy. The Department of Homeland Security is going to want a full report on this incident. Your partner may have prevented a bioterrorism attack that could have killed thousands of people. As the federal agents finished processing the scene and taking statements, Walker reflected on the day's events. He had always known that Kiko was special, but today had demonstrated capabilities that went far beyond what anyone had expected from the experimental primate security program. The partnership between human and animal in law enforcement was nothing new, but Kiko represented something different. His intelligence, combined with his ability to detect threats that sophisticated technology might miss, made him a unique asset in the fight against increasingly complex security threats. "Ready to go home, buddy?" Walker asked as they prepared to leave the terminal. The excitement of the arrest had died down, and normal airport operations were resuming around them. Kiko chattered softly and settled onto Walker's shoulder, his small hands gripping the officer's uniform as they walked through the terminal. To most observers, they looked like an unusual but harmless pair, a security guard and his pet monkey heading home after a routine shift. But Walker knew better. Today had proven that in an age of sophisticated terrorist threats and international criminal networks, sometimes the most effective security tool was a 4-pound primate with an intuitive understanding of human behavior and an unwavering loyalty to his human partner. As they walked past Gate 22, where Flight 892 had finally departed for Tokyo without its originally intended passenger, Walker couldn't help but wonder what other threats Kiko might detect in the future. The world was becoming increasingly dangerous, but as long as he had his unusual partner by his side, Walker felt confident that they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The partnership between Officer Benjamin Walker and Kiko had started as an experiment in enhanced security protocols. Today it had become something much more significant, a demonstration that the bond between human and animal could be one of the most effective weapons in the fight against those who would threaten innocent lives. And as they headed home through the busy corridors of LAX, Walker made a mental note to pick up some extra bananas for his partner. After all, saving thousands of lives deserved a special reward, even if the hero only weighed 4 pounds and fit comfortably on a human shoulder. The airport security program would undoubtedly expand after today's success, but Walker knew that no other primate would ever quite match Kiko's unique combination of intelligence, intuition, and unwavering dedication to protecting the innocent travelers who passed through their domain every day. In a world where threats could come from anywhere and take any form, sometimes the best defense was a small monkey with big instincts and an even bigger heart. 3 weeks after the incident, Walker received a call that would change everything. Agent Collins was on the line, her voice carrying an urgency that immediately put him on alert. "Walker, we need you and Kiko at LAX immediately. We've got a situation that requires your partner's unique abilities." "What kind of situation?" Walker asked, already reaching for his uniform. "The Petrov arrest led us to a larger network. Intelligence suggests there's going to be another attempt today, but we don't know who, when, or where in the airport. We need Kiko to help us identify the threat. Within an hour, Walker and Kiko were back at LAX, this time working with a full federal task force. The terminal buzzed with heightened security, though most passengers remained unaware of the enhanced measures in place. Kiko seemed to sense the gravity of the situation. The small monkey was more alert than usual, his dark eyes scanning the crowds with an intensity that made Walker nervous. They had been positioned near the international departure gates, where intelligence suggested the threat was most likely to manifest. Remember, we're looking for anyone displaying the same behavioral patterns as Petrov, Agent Collins briefed them. Excessive nervousness, unusual focus on timing, suspicious interaction with luggage or personal items. But as they began their patrol, something unexpected happened. Kiko suddenly went rigid, his small body trembling with what Walker recognized as extreme distress. The monkey began pointing frantically toward the domestic departure area, completely opposite from where they were supposed to be focusing. "Collins, I think we're in the wrong terminal," Walker radioed. "Kiko's picking up something in domestic departures." "Negative, Walker. Intelligence clearly indicates international." But Kiko had already leaped from Walker's shoulder and was racing across the terminal, his small form weaving between startled passengers. Walker had no choice but to follow, his radio crackling with confused orders from the command center. The monkey led them to Gate 45, where a flight to Denver was preparing for departure. At first glance, nothing seemed amiss. Passengers were boarding normally, families were saying goodbye, and the gate agents were conducting their usual pre-flight procedures. But Kiko's behavior became increasingly frantic. He was chattering in the specific pattern Walker had learned meant multiple threats, a signal the monkey had never used before. The implication was terrifying, not one person but several. "Collins, we may be looking at a coordinated attack," Walker reported. "Kiko's indicating multiple hostiles in the domestic departure area." As federal agents began discreetly repositioning, Walker watched his partner work. Kiko had developed a systematic approach, moving from passenger to passenger with quick, darting glances. When he reached a group of 4 travelers sitting separately, but within sight of each other, his entire demeanor changed. The monkey positioned himself in the center of the waiting area and began a display Walker had never seen before. Kiko was pointing to each of the 4 passengers in sequence, then making the sign for "connected," indicating they were working together despite appearing to be strangers. Walker studied the 4 individuals: a businessman reading a newspaper, a young woman with a backpack, an elderly man with a walking cane, and a middle-aged woman knitting. To any human observer, they appeared to be random passengers waiting for their flight, but Kiko's behavioral analysis was revealing something else. The monkey was picking up on microsynchronized movements, split-second glances between the individuals, and breathing patterns that indicated they were all experiencing the same elevated stress levels. "I've got 4 suspects," Walker radioed. "Seats 12B, 15F, 18A, and 21C. They appear unconnected, but Kiko's reading them as a coordinated group." Agent Collins arrived with backup just as the boarding announcement began. "We can't delay the flight without cause," she said. "Are you certain about this?" Before Walker could answer, Kiko did something unprecedented. The monkey approached the businessman with the newspaper and began performing what could only be described as a distraction routine, chattering, gesturing, and generally making himself impossible to ignore. The man's reaction was telling. Instead of the amused tolerance most passengers showed when encountering Kiko, the businessman displayed genuine alarm. His eyes darted to his 3 companions, a momentary break in operational discipline that confirmed everything Kiko had detected. "That's our confirmation," Walker said. "Move in." What followed was a carefully coordinated arrest that revealed the scope of the threat Kiko had identified. The 4 passengers were members of a domestic terrorism cell planning to hijack the Denver flight and crash it into a government building. They had been using advanced communication techniques and psychological training to avoid detection, but they hadn't counted on being observed by a capuchin monkey whose abilities went far beyond normal behavioral analysis. The investigation revealed that the cell had been inspired by Petrov's operation, believing that if biological weapons could be smuggled through airport security, a coordinated hijacking would be even easier. They had spent months studying security protocols, passenger screening procedures, and law enforcement response patterns, but all their preparation had been useless against Kiko's intuitive understanding of human deception and group dynamics. How does he do it? Agent Collins asked Walker as they watched the suspects being led away in custody. Our best behavioral analysts missed this completely. Walker looked down at Kiko, who was now contentedly eating a banana while sitting on a bench. I think Kiko sees patterns we can't, he said. He's not just reading individual behavior. He's analyzing group dynamics, social connections, and stress patterns across multiple people simultaneously. The Department of Homeland Security wants to expand the primate security program nationwide, Collins said. Today proved that traditional security measures aren't enough against sophisticated threats. As they prepared to leave the airport for the second time in 3 weeks, Walker reflected on how much his life had changed since being partnered with Kiko. What had started as an experimental program had evolved into something that was redefining airport security across the country. The partnership between human intuition and animal instinct was proving more effective than any technology or training program. Kiko's abilities went beyond simple threat detection. The monkey seemed to understand the broader context of security challenges and could adapt his responses accordingly. Ready for some well-deserved rest, "Partner?" Walker asked as they walked through the terminal. Kiko chattered softly and settled onto Walker's shoulder, his small hands gripping the officer's uniform. Around them, passengers hurried to catch flights, completely unaware that their safety had been ensured by a 4-pound hero who asked for nothing more than bananas and the occasional scratch behind the ears. The world was becoming increasingly complex, with threats that evolved faster than traditional security measures could adapt. But as long as Walker had Kiko by his side, he felt confident that they could face whatever challenges the future might bring. After all, in an age of sophisticated terrorist networks and international criminal organizations, sometimes the most effective defense was the ancient partnership between human and animal, a bond that transcended training, technology, and protocol to create something truly extraordinary. And as they headed home through the busy corridors of LAX, Walker knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, and new opportunities for his remarkable partner to prove that heroism comes in all sizes, even when it weighs only 4 pounds and fits perfectly on a human shoulder. Thank you all so much for watching this story. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications for new stories.